Hey, what's up everybody? David from Tough Guys TV here. On this episode, we're going to be opening up and taking a look at this Massca Tools precision joinery system. It's a pocket hole jig, and I actually won it via a contest on Instagram, which is pretty cool. I don't win stuff very often, and that was really cool to win it. And I figured, well, since I have it, I'll do an unboxing and review of it. And mainly I want to look at the differences between the Kreg jig, I believe it's the K4. I'll show the one that I have from Kreg. This one is interesting because it has a solid aluminum body. Like the whole thing's made of aluminum, which is different. With the Kreg, I've actually messed up a couple times and put the bit like straight through it accidentally, just not knowing how I had it set. And so I really want to see the differences. Massca is seems like a smaller company, but they're doing some really cool stuff. And they also sent me like a big pack of screws. So I'll start off, show you everything I have, and then we'll open it up, set it up. I've never opened this. I think it's gonna be cool. Let's get right into it. If you don't mind, check us out on social media, show us some support there. And if you love what we do, please consider subscribing. Let's check it out. And here we go. This is the aluminum pocket hole jig kit by Massca. I'm hoping I'm saying that correct. It is a heavy duty aluminum body, which is pretty cool. Again, compared to the Kreg system that I have, it is not made of aluminum. So here's a little bit overview of the box. Each side has some details here. Tells you some stuff you could use this thing for. It's pretty cool. And then it tells us what we've got in the box here. So we've got all kinds of stuff. So we're gonna open this up and just kind of go through it. I just wanted you guys to see the box. Tells you what type of woods to use it on. And let's see about opening this up. You can see there I have not opened this yet. So hey, it looks nice inside. This looks like they're manual. Nice to have. I'll definitely review this to try to familiarize myself with it. That way, as we go through and get everything put together and do some tests with it, I'll actually know what I'm talking about. A box here. Looks like maybe some screws. A couple different types there. Some kind of looks like a metal plate of some kind is inside of there. And this looks like our bit. And here is the square tip bit that's gonna go with the screws. And there's a few other adapters in there. And then it looks like another pack of just screws to test everything out. One more is hiding inside. All right, now first impressions of this thing is legitimate. It is heavy and it feels really, really nice. That solid aluminum feel, it's kind of a matte feel. It's cold to the touch. Everything feels really, really nice. Just initial comparisons to the Kreg setup that I have. I mean, that thing feels super cheap compared to this. So let's get it set up here and maybe do some tests. Now, I recently added this little lip onto my workbench, and I wanted to get it set up to where I could just smoothly put boards across the top here and use the length of it for one of these type of jigs. So they also give you screws in the box, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw this down, this little lip, and then we'll start reviewing all the components and getting it tested out. All right, we've got it all screwed in. And it was really cool that they included those screws. I thought it's pretty nice. And it is perfectly level enough for what I'm doing across there. And now we're ready to go. A quick overview of some of the components. I took some time to read the manual, and I've got a little bit better understanding here of what's going on. So one cool thing that I do like, so all these little bolts that are in here, like those there, they use the longer Allen that's in there, and basically you could take everything apart, clean it individually, put it back together. It's very cool. So this locks in with this and comes off, and the other Allen that comes inside of there is for tightening down the locking ring onto the drill bit. So a couple quick notes on this here. You've got, this is the depth guide for the drill bit, which is quite a bit different than the way Kreg does it. So this, you just twist around and then you set the drill bit through, which I'll actually show here in a second. As you can see, that's gonna sit down onto the thickness that you're trying to get. A little different than the way Kreg does it, but pretty cool, you know, something different. And this is very similar. You just loosen up, that's the locking nut, and you basically just set this to be the depth of the board that you have in place. So right now I've got it set for a 1x. It clicks in place, and the head has kind of a rubberized finish. Feels really, really nice, and it gets a really good connection on the wood and has a nice click feel when you lock it in place, which I also really like. So one cool thing is down here, it's just a quick guide for your thickness. So I can see, since I've ran these through the planer, the little shy of 3/4 inch. Now on the front, I can come around and loosen here and here, and then adjust the depth on this as well. So it's very fast. You can just reference what you need here and then go to here. So that's pretty cool. Everything else feels really sturdy, works really well. So before we do a couple cuts, I'm gonna show a couple other little details that I read about in the guide, and we'll also show how to set the drill bit in place. One additional feature I thought was really cool is that this piece, when you loosen here and here, you can actually take this completely out. Then I could also remove the vacuum attachment here. So with the vacuum attachment off, I could also take off the rails and I could create an entirely mobile piece. This plate that comes with it would go onto the bottom and allow me to screw these two arms back on, which would make this thing a completely mobile setup. I could just set it on any block of wood, and then I would have the ability to make the pocket holes. Then you just clamp it to the board. That's pretty cool. I like the way that it comes apart. Now, getting it back together can be a little tricky because these little arm pieces here do spin around. So when you're putting it back together, it can be a little difficult, but it does just slide right back in place. And again, this thing is just a solid block of aluminum. It has a really good weight to it, a really nice machine finish. It feels nice. I don't see any issues with this stuff rubbing off over time. It feels like it's really well made. So there you go. That's a pretty cool little feature, and that's what this thing is that was inside the box. What I want to show next is setting the depth guide for the actual drill bit, and this little wheel is what clips into this little hole here. And it doesn't actually clip, it just sits in place, and then you can just turn it as you need to. At that point, the drill bit go through this side, and the tooth actually sits down on whichever piece you have. I've repositioned the camera a little bit so you guys can see this better. So the bit goes through the opening and it sits down on there on whichever depth that you have. So that's interesting. An interesting way of doing it. It's not, to me, since this piece comes out and you could lose this. Like if that was gone, then I wouldn't have any way of doing this quickly. Kreg has it built in a couple rails here, and I'll jump over and show that one here in just a second as a comparison. But this right here, like where you can just set the drill bit in it and it stays in place, but it also allows you to set that depth. I feel like that's a superior way of doing it. I think this is cool. It's creative, it's quick. And so let's just show, for example here, if I wanted to set this to 3/4, and then there's that locking ring, this would then slide onto here, and you guys can see way up here in the corner. And we can lock that into place, and now the drill bit is ready for that depth. So it is fast and it is relatively easy, but again, and maybe I've missed where you could store this piece, but I feel like if this thing is gone, then how do I set this easily? Not really sure. I love that. It's still cool. Interesting to see a new way of doing it. For quick reference, I don't want to make this about the Kreg setup. This is the K4, I believe, is what it's called. And it's got the very similar locking lever. Everything on this one, though, is just plastic. You can see there where I had something set wrong one time and I just blew my drill bit right through there. Now, I guess you could say if I did that on the other one, I'd probably destroy the drill bit, but I don't know. This one's plastic, that one's aluminum, you pick. Here's that part I was talking about though, where the drill bit can just set down in here. And when you loosen this part, you slide the drill bit up and down, and that's how you set the depth. So no, you don't have the depth gauge here, but this right here I feel like is really, really nice. Now, neither of them have a place to put your Allen. I just keep mine hugged up right there, and I've never lost it in all this time. But I love being able to just set the drill bit down and I have it there. I can just leave it and it doesn't fall off. And then of course they've got their measurements here on the side rail as opposed to on the front. And they do have this really annoying tiny little thing here to loosen this, which drives me crazy because you have to take off the vacuum attachment in order to loosen it really. Whereas over here, you don't have to do that. The vacuum attachment's on the front of it. When it's locked in place, you can still access this on the side. And like I said though, there's nowhere to keep this. You know, me in my situation, I can just set it, you know, here, and it's not gonna go anywhere. But if you didn't have it set up like this, you'd have to maybe bore out a little channel to keep it. Maybe you just put your stuff in the toolbox. Just my observations there on that feature alone. And since I've got the vacuum attachment off, I figured I'd show to put it on. One cool thing I just noticed is that you could take this off and then put it on whichever way worked for you. That's actually pretty cool. I didn't even really think about that. I do believe that on the Kreg set, you can turn it either way. So I think that is a similarity, but the other one, it doesn't screw in place, so it's a little less stable. I do like that this one screws in place. I've grabbed a couple of 1x boards and cut them down. We actually have a little sign we need to make, so I'm just gonna basically be lining these boards up together. So I figured, why not try this out? I wanna be drilling into the back side. So the side you're gonna drill into, you want facing closest to this here on the inside. And if I set that in place, my back side is already set to work and lock it in. Now you can set this before, kind of like we mentioned, you want to adjust that arm here so that it's the correct length, so that way when you put this down and you get tension, you get good tension and that board can't wiggle out of there. So again, that locks in place just fine. So now we're going to run a few cuts through here. Not cuts, we're going to drill some holes, and I'll show you guys how that works. These were the first cuts that I made with it, the first drill holes rather, and I did have a little bit here just not clean. As far as I know, that's not something that I'm doing in particularly, but again, it would take just a second to rough that up with a piece of sandpaper and get that off of there, or even run a razor blade down it if you needed to. I mean, even me, just my finger on there, and I'm getting most of the burrs cleaned off pretty quick. So other than that, the holes look really clean. Everything cuts well and it looks good. Back in the installation manual, it does give you a rundown here of material thickness versus the screw length, so that if you're wondering what size you need and what type of screw. It tells you here for what type of wood. Now these are things that are in general. Do your own research online and research the type of joint you're trying to create in order to have the best fit and the best application of using something like this. The information you get in here is actually really good though. As far as the rest of it, lots of good info, a good overall rundown of all the parts and components. I didn't really show this at the beginning, but I do like the manual. They kept it simple and short and sweet, and it's good to go. So the last thing I'm gonna do here is I wanna actually get these two attached together and show off the bits and some of the screws that they gave with it in the package. As a part of the giveaway, I actually won this with it as well. It was a 1,000 count screw kit. This thing is super heavy. And it comes in this nice little closing container. And they did actually do one more bit with it as well. So now I've got one extra that comes with it. So I assume if you bought this kit from Massca, you would actually get this extra bit as well. It's zip tied onto the package. So I'm gonna pull a couple screws out of here for our thickness, which looks like it's gonna be the 1¼ inch screw because we're 3/4 inch wood, and get these things put together. But this is pretty cool. Since I am making this a sign, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of glue as well before I clamp it down, and we've just got some type on. Got the bit set in place here, and I've got those 1¼ inch screws, and that's what we're going to use to put in. And it held together pretty well. These boards have a little bit of a bow in them, so they're just a scrap piece that I found. But I think it worked out pretty well. The screws go together just fine. Everything looks good. Overall, that process was pretty easy. Let's go over to this thing again for some final thoughts. One last thing I'm gonna show off here is I have this little bit of wood sticking out over the end. So I did a 1/2 inch bit hole there and bored it out a little extra. And then I put some holes here for the Allen wrenches to sit into, as well as for this guy. I just drilled a little hole the same width as him, and now that just sticks in place, and this still moves freely, but it gives me a space to store that stuff. I mean, obviously it sticks down underneath your table, but for me, I think that works out pretty well. And since I've got this level and flush going across, this works out really well. I can keep everything in place right there. I'm not gonna lose it. It's a great spot. There you go. Now overall, I really enjoyed using that. I love the build. I do wish that they had some spots, built into the rig to actually store the pieces. Now they may have stuff on their website. I honestly haven't looked. They may make something that you can put all your accessories into, which would be awesome. Overall though, I really love the build. I love that it's solid aluminum. It's kind of a nice change nowadays. Like there's so many things that are just plastic, you don't get that metal feel. I really like that. As a jig for doing pocket holes, it's fantastic. I don't really feel like anything on it would wear out over time. I feel like it would work really well. And overall, I really liked it. I do like that I was able to have that little extended area where I could drill some holes to put stuff. It was kind of a lucky thing that happened to me, and hopefully that'll give you guys a little head start on that part of it. And obviously winning it in a giveaway was cool. But I mean, I'll put links in the description here so that you guys can check them out. And if you're on social media, obviously check them out as well. They're doing all kinds of cool stuff. They have all kinds of other products that they're working on, trying to really build a corner in that market for themselves. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this video helps you guys make a decision or make a purchase or just share some ideas. If you love what we do, please consider subscribing. Check us out on social media, and we'll see you guys in the next project.